Hello again. Welcome. This is Fringe Festival support. We're usually found this time of year round about the Edinburgh Fringe, but this year, obviously due to events, we're talking to some people instead who might have been there with us and see how they're getting on through all of this. We usually have a focus on the mental health of performers, so really there's never been a more relevant time for different reasons. Tiernan and Douieb, welcome to FFS Lockdown, which
Hello.
I've decided to title it because it sounds like a cool wrestling pay-per-view.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah, welcome to FFS Lockdown. I would watch that. I'm not even that into wrestling. I'd still watch that.
You might go through to Winter Slam or whatever we decide to call the next one if you win. How have you been?
Yeah. I mean, I keep responding to people with coping. That's it. Rather than good or bad, I'm coping. I had several weeks of not coping, and I've sort of come through it, I think. And now I'm coping with various wobbles included in the coping, I think.
Was that early on, or I mean, things are kind of progressively getting better, I think.
Yeah, it's tricky. So I mean, if I'll try and go through it. I had immediate lockdown. I was all right because I would just over created things and I didn't know how bad or how long it would go on for. Then I burnt myself out quite badly. Then had an existential crisis about my career and the entire state of comedy. And then some point, I think around June, July, suddenly went, I don't know what it was. Something gave me a bit of a kickstart. I think it was when we were allowed to go outside for longer, really helped. And I started doing running. I've become one of those dickheads. And so I'm on my last week of Couch to 5K this week. And I just started I don't know, trying to write some things that I'd been meaning to write for a long time. And I finally felt like I had the creative brain to do it in. I mean, a big problem for us is that our daughter, who's not here, I was speaking to you on the one day of childcare we have this week. Our daughter's turned 2 as lockdown began. And what that meant was that for the first 3 months at least, we were stuck indoors with a tantruming, demanding child who didn't understand the state of the world. And we're going, what's happening to our careers? What's happening to life? Oh my God, are we going to get, COVID? All the while, this child's going, not the red straw, the blue straw, wah! And you're, and it was grounding in some ways and immensely stressful in others. And that point in sort of June, she was able to go to grandparents again. We were able to go outside and suddenly it helped. And now I'm in a place where I'm sort of there's a bit of me that's enjoying the challenge of trying to find other work. So I've been doing bits of writing. I've written a few articles. But then that is balanced with the every now and then going, oh my God, there's not enough work to live on sort of feeling. Before mid-March, before this all kicked off, I had my life booked in till January work-wise, and that all disappeared overnight. And that is quite hard to digest still.
I think I've heard that from a couple of people, that it was just basically the day it went into lockdown, the diaries started emptying.
Yeah, well, I was, there's going to be some clunk name dropping, I apologise, but I was meant to be supporting Frankie Boyle from July through to October, at least 3 or 4 times a week. And then I was also doing some other work for a charity, writing and hosting their podcast. And then we had Comedy Club for Kids gigs at beautiful venues like the Old Vic and the South Bank Centre. All these places I'd been dreaming of doing a show at. And so it was all really nice work that I was excited about too. And then it all went just very quickly. And I think it was, especially as someone who, it's only been the last couple of years where I've managed to get my year booked in like that. It's taken a long time. And it was finally at a point where I thought, do you know what? I'm not going to be worried about bills for a year. And then suddenly I was. So that was pretty bad, I think. But I think I'm through that, I think.
Have you had any help in terms of the financial? Did you qualify for any of the government support or the Arts Council?
Yeah, I qualified. Luckily, I qualified for the self-employed support, which was really handy. And very early on, I managed to get a couple of the comedy, little bits of help from some of the comedy grants that were going around. So that really helped. And because I've done comedy for so long, I know what it's like. I've got savings because of just the amount of years where I didn't have savings and was in a terrible situation. So
and the day might come.
Yeah, that's it. So, and also there's 2 of us. So my wife's got savings, I've got savings. The 2 of us together, hopefully will keep us going for a tiny bit. But
I mean, I'm not going to ask to see your bank accounts or anything. I mean,
are you sure? Are you sure?
Just a rough overview would be fine.
Well, we're safe for a few months, but again, it's that funny thing, especially with a kid, that they drain money more than you. She's so small. I don't know how she does it, but money goes on things for her, and we're now entering a period where we need more childcare in order to find work that we don't have. So then that costs more. It's all those sort of worries, I think, are stressful.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Like everybody's got such a very different experience of this, depending on like already their home circumstances and their work circumstances. I mean, let's not get into the politics of it, but I think, at least the government covered some people, but there's an awful lot of people that fell through the cracks.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, we've got very good friends who had taken all the advice that we were given for years, which I didn't take, which is to make yourself a small limited company. And they did that because they were advised to by everyone, and did it and then didn't get anything. So I am grateful that I was not organised enough to ever do that. It's my own laziness. I looked at it and went, I can't bother to sort all that out.
The other tricky thing for performers is that, a lot of the support relied on you having actually made money before the coronavirus. And instead of it draining away for years as you try and build a career.
Well, that's it. I mean, I sort of felt grateful because I hadn't done the Edinburgh Fringe since 2017 because of child, and I was too tired to write a show for 2 years. But every year I've done the Edinburgh Fringe, I've not made any profit because the Edinburgh Fringe cancels it out. And so I was quite, again, just luck of circumstance, but the last 3 years haven't been the Fringe. And so I managed to get some self-employed support. But my wife had a year of maternity leave and she's self-employed, so they didn't count that. So that's 1 year of profit gone because they don't consider maternity leave. So, I mean, yeah, as you said, we won't go into politics because I'll bore you for hours about it and be just increasingly angry about it as we talk.
I was going to say, at this point, we should point out that you actually have a politics podcast that people can go and get all of that good stuff from.
Yeah, it's starting again on this coming Monday. I'd given it a break. I've had 4 weeks off because partly because every week I do different descriptions of politicians and I was starting to run out. But also I just needed a mental break from it because
there's only so many 4-letter words, I guess.
Yeah, well, exactly. But it was just relentless as well. And in my head, I thought maybe the summer months will be slightly less relentless. They weren't. I just insisted on stopping for a bit. But I'll be back this Monday. So I've got almost too much to write about. It's almost easier when the news was less busy because my podcast could be shorter. I'd have less to write about. It was good.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest story of the last few weeks, was almost a guy going on holiday. So it's quite hard to take a break from anything when that's a story.
Yeah, when he pitched his tent in someone else's fields because someone in charge of Brexit doesn't even understand borders. Incredible. But yeah, it's relentless. It's constantly relentless, and they're terrible people. And I'm sure that added to the stress of anyone that paid attention to it as well. I'm sure it just didn't help with everything else.
Have you started to perform again? I saw you've done one of the drive-through or the drive-in gigs.
Yeah, I've done 2 shows. I did one kids gig, which was in a beautiful, beautiful venue. It's the New Normal Festival, and it was in southwest London, and it was in a little courtyard of this incredible building that I didn't know was there before. And that was lovely. It was about 70 people, socially distanced, but kids gigs are often weird and outdoors or in a tent or in some weird, room or, done them on hospital wards, done them wherever. So it didn't feel that strange for a kids gig at all. And that was beautiful and really fun. And the adult gig was in a field in Nottinghamshire. That's
right. It wasn't one of the drive-in ones, was it? It was a sort of outdoor, socially distanced.
Yeah, so I was meant to do a drive-in one and it got pulled, which was brutal at the time because I had one gig in the diary and then it didn't happen and the whole series of drive-ins got pulled for various complicated reasons, which is a real shame. And then this one was just in a field, but it was... And so I'm just going to prelude this by saying the audience had a brilliant time. It was great. It was lovely to do a gig, but it was fucking strange, right? It was really strange was really weird. The audience is spread out in front of the stage, so it looked a bit like you're the opening act of a festival and the audience haven't turned up yet. And most importantly, I mean, there were some wonderful loud laughers, but you couldn't always hear them. Depending on which way the wind blew, you couldn't always hear anything. And I was comparing, and so I couldn't hear anything they said if I asked them anything. And for a first gig back, when you're not feeling match fit, when you haven't gigged for months, it wasn't easy, but it was lovely. It still felt really good. We got some lovely messages from the audience afterwards. And do you know what? I mean, more than anything, being backstage with everyone was so lovely. And I was on with a chappie called Sandy, who I've known for many years, and I got to drive her to the gig and back. And especially the post-gig drive home was just therapeutic. Just chatting to someone who's not in your family and doing the post-gig, the adrenaline buzz coming down, we could just natter about everything that's wrong with the world. It just was, that was the best bit for me.
Yeah, I think early on we decided, we thought, well, we should do FFS like anyway, because that's what we need, really. We need to be reaching out and talking to people and kind of getting the sense that everybody is still out there and we're not just all kind of now on our own in our houses. And we typically, you know, with all of that time, we didn't get around to it. So here we are last week of Edinburgh. Now we're starting to cook. Now we're starting to do a few shows.
But there was a weird thing, wasn't there, where I think everyone kept talking about all this time and lots of, you know, there were all these printed guides of like, well, you're in lockdown. Why don't you learn 12 languages and make sourdough and all these skills? And actually, I think for a lot of people, myself included, I mean, childcare took up all my life, but when it didn't, the anxiety meant I didn't want to do anything except I wanted to eat and watch TV and play computer, and I couldn't engage my brain with anything. And I think that's part of the reason I took up running is because the 3 months of lockdown, I ate so much that I've got to get rid of it somehow. But I couldn't get my head around anything remotely creative or just, you know, I don't know how anyone even managed admin. It was just a bit too much.
Yeah, I thought right at the beginning of lockdown, yeah, it's the languages, you know, learn the oboe. You know, what are you going to do with your time? I thought I was going to be like, right, I'm going to do like pull-ups like Sarah Connor and come out of this like prison ripped. Like I'm going to be like, that's how I'll spend my time in Corona Pokey. I'm going to just be absolutely massive when I come out. And then it's like, hang on a minute, it's August. What happened to that? Where did that all go?
I loved, I think it was Sarah Millican put a thing up one day, which is about how in lockdown, if we all become fat, then when we leave, no one will be fat. And I was like, that's a really good, it's really good. But I have to go regular hospital checkups for my diabetes. And my nurse congratulated me because I stayed exactly the same weight. And she said she's the first one of their patients who hasn't gained. I was like, this is normally for me, I'm sort of quite chubby and I'm always a bit overweight. But I was congratulated on not moving remotely, which is such a strange situation. I had such a kick in my step going, I have not made any improvements. I'm a winner. Yeah,
I think I was actually shielding for the most of it. And I think that's ended now, although the correspondence is very mixed. But yeah, I've got a little bit of Corona timber going, which I think once we're all out and about again, hopefully I can get rid of.
Yeah, or keep it for the winter when we'll need it. So,
exactly, yeah. Keep that layer.
That's it.
Just a little bit about the Edinburgh Fringe, obviously cancelled. Were you planning to attend this year?
I initially was, and then I got these Frankie support gigs, so I was going to be doing that for the summer. But I was planning to, I'm really missing writing a show, and I'm already sort of ruminating ideas now for maybe next year. But I did go up to Edinburgh because we've got very good friends in Leith, and they've got a little boy who is basically the same age as our daughter, and we've not met him and they've not met her because we haven't gone for the last couple of years, and they've also been in parent fug. And so we drove up to Edinburgh for 3 days, and it was largely lovely. And I got sunburnt on Portobello Beach, which is just weird. And if that doesn't wake people up to climate change, nothing will. And but it was largely lovely, apart from the day where we walked around where the Fringe should have been, and that was too much for me, and I wish we hadn't done it. It was just really depressing. I think not just because, you know, I've seen Edinburgh without the Fringe in it before, but it was suddenly, I think everything about comedy at the moment kind of hit me all at once. I went, damn, I really shouldn't have. It was sort of a bit self-torture.
Yeah, it's all the people as well, I find, that you tend to bump into every year. And like with a whole year off, it's like, I'm not going to speak to people for 2 years.
That's it. That's it. I mean, like I can't pretend there aren't plus points. Like a lot of people have been joking about all the money comedians have saved not going. And driving up to Edinburgh this year just to see friends was the least stressed I've ever felt traveling to Edinburgh. It was a really weird thing entering the kind of city borders, as it were, and then feeling, oh, I'm quite relaxed. Like I don't feel anxiety and concern, and that was really nice, not being worried about a show. But it just is. I think there is that thing of it's such a focal point of our year, comedy wise, but also social wise, and there are so many people that I'll only see up there, like you said, especially international performers as well. People that come over, they're normally gigging in Australia or somewhere else in the world, and then they're over for that month. And and I think it also just made me feel really well, I mean, generally the lack of comedy has, but just feel really redundant. Normally in Edinburgh, you're in Edinburgh really, really busy at this time of year. Or, I mean, the last couple of years when I haven't gone, I've done some shows in Hong Kong in the summer, and which I can't ever do again for a number of reasons now, not just the pandemic. It's not particularly last year when we arrived just after a big protest and left just before another big one. And it was quite stressful. But even so, it's just knowing that there's nothing happening this summer, that there's, normally we'd be busy now and then we'd be really busy again in the winter. And I don't know if any of that's going to happen. And I'm quite a workaholic. I like to have 5 things on at once. And it's really thrown me not having stuff on.
I'm trying to think, you were actually our first guest 2 years ago. I think you were the first person to actually do an interview with us. And we spoke then about Edinburgh getting too big and needing to reset. Do you think, are you optimistic that there might be some things that come out of this that maybe for next year they will look to improve?
Yes and no. I think, can I get bleak? Is it right to get bleak?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, so I'll tell you, let's be positive first. I think
we can do a song afterwards. It'll be fine.
Okay, good, fine. I think there are some positives. I think that it had got too big, and I think it had got too expensive. And I think some of the things that they're talking about, there was a Scotsman article about it, talking to the Fringe, the Edinburgh Fringe people and everything, and they were talking about regulating accommodation so it wasn't too expensive. That's really important.
Yeah.
I think some sort of regulation of venues just concentrates it a bit more for audience and performers. My worry, where I'll get bleak, is that there's talk of, say, next year it just being 20 to 30% of the shows. Yeah. And I can't help but feel that will go to the biggest agencies, the biggest acts that will definitely sell tickets, fair play to them, but then it won't be a Fringe anymore. And then it won't be the hub of arts that it was, where anyone could go and do a show. And it still needs to be that. It still needs to be the fun, completely bonkers show that you weren't expecting to see, that you've either walked in for free or paid a few quid for. It needs to have that atmosphere. Otherwise, it's just going to be like any one of the other millions of comedy festivals where you go to see the same 5 acts do that show that they've been touring, and I worry about that. That's what I'm concerned.
I mean, that's the joy of Edinburgh, stumbling into a venue that you didn't even know was there and finding a show that you didn't even think you'd like.
Absolutely.
Do you think, the risk is it will further the inequality? Like, the people who you would expect to be in those big venues will be there, and, £10 a ticket, £15 a ticket. And the people that won't be able to be there are the ones that are doing, the free shows and the arguably, harsh to say, the more interesting stuff, but, the more sort of diverse stuff.
Well, it's like, and again, I'd be careful, because I think a lot of the acts who are doing very well now, I think, are fantastic and they're friends of mine. But like in this period where there's not much comedy, I've seen a number of people go, comedy's back. And it's like, it is for about 10 of you. There was a week of gigs. I think Chortle announced there's the week of outdoor gigs, and the same act was doing 3 of them. And that's good for them, like great news for them. But for the rest of us, it's not the industry back yet. And there's still hundreds and hundreds of acts who aren't that one person on the telly who isn't getting that. And my fear is that, I fully understand it from a business point of view. Places have got to sell tickets, so they want to have the most recognizable faces. But it's a real concern for the rest of us who aren't those people. And I don't think we'll get those offers straight away.
Is there anyone you've particularly admired through lockdown? I've been asking this question, who's been doing who's been managing to do stuff that you thought, oh, I wish I'd done that?
Oh, that's a very good question. I don't know. There's been quite a lot of people. I mean, your former guest, Suze Kempner, I can't believe she's done a show every day throughout August online. I'm in awe of that. But I mean, her and so many others that have made good video content, like Rosie Holt's been doing some fantastic bits and pieces. Jenny Collier's videos have been wonderful. I definitely burnt out quite early on from making too much stuff, and I admire the people that didn't and carried on. I think it's important to have a break, but I also was just impressed with the people whose brains kept going. I'll admit though, I didn't watch that much comedy during lockdown. My big thing was I just watched lots of like dystopian sci-fi fiction. I think part of me was like watching worlds that were even worse than our world made me feel better. Like I need to see people in situations that are so terrible. I look back and go, hey, I'm all right. I'm just sitting at home eating popcorn. Like, you know.
Yeah, you just think, I hope this isn't 3 years off.
Yeah, that was my concern. I read I've been quite terrible at reading last couple of years, and the last big book I read had talk about this is what's the word? I can't think of what the word is now. Foreboding, I suppose, but it's not the right word. Anyway, the last big book I read was by Emily St. John Mandel, and it's called Station 11. And it is in a world that's post-pandemic. I read it over just after Christmas, and it's about a group of performers that are going across post-pandemic America, performing Shakespeare to the survivors. It's an incredible book. But I read that, I went, wow, that was amazing. And then 2 months later, I was like, oh no, I shouldn't have read that book.
It could never happen. Never.
Terrible.
Well, really good to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming and telling us all about it. Best of luck.
Thank you.
And stay safe out there, mate.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for talking. It's just nice to talk to people, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, we'll be back with more guests in a bit, you know.